And in today's session, so I'm going to talk about the Android Study Jam Part 1, which is how you can get started with Kotlin. And tomorrow, the subsequent session will be how you can use your Kotlin knowledge to create Android application. But before I talk much about what is Kotlin and Android and other things, how many of you are Android developers or who have developed application either for Android, iOS, or any sort of things? I know most of you might be the students, but still, students are also developing applications. So everyone is new for this concept, no experience in app development. Okay, then all those who have joined here, why do you want to create Android application? So what is that something which motivates you to be the Android developer? Because if you are here, that means you are interested in app development. But why is that? Is it just to earn money or you have something else in your mind? Okay. So eventually, Android app development, if you are looking this career as for earning money, then that is not something which you'll find it more exciting career to be, because Android is one such domain which is changing widely. The app development which was there in 2, 3, or 5 years before, it's not exactly the same. But if your objective is to take your ideas to the large set of audience, also if you want to help others, means the large community with your skills, with your ideas, if you want to help them uplift their life, then certainly app development is something which will excite you, because you might think that your idea is very small, but who knows, your idea may be so useful for other guys. Android is running over 2 billion devices worldwide. So now you can think of the power of Android. Your app could reach to over 2 billion devices. Well, let me start the study jam now. So here we'll talk about the Kotlin first. What is Kotlin? The Kotlin basics. Then we'll also see how we can get started with Kotlin. Later on, I'll show the hands-on with Kotlin, where if you already have the IntelliJ or Android Studio, then you can try it on there. Or if you do not have it, then Kotlin Playground is certainly an online environment where you can try out those code. Okay, so let me start with what is Kotlin. Anyone of you have used Kotlin before, by the way? So, okay, I see lots of no, no, no there. Okay, fine. Which programming language you're most comfortable with? The object-oriented language, apart from like Kotlin.
Java is more comfortable.
Flutter, I could see responses on Flutter, C++, Python. Python is for scripting. But if you know about C++, then you might already know a lot about the Kotlin also, because both of them are object-oriented languages. Flutter is a framework with which you can create the cross-platform app, which means that single code base using Dart language, and that will run on Android, iOS, and web from a single code base. Those who have learned Java, even better, because Kotlin is an alternative of Java. If you learn Kotlin, I'm sure you'll not even look towards Java because of the set of features that it offers. So Kotlin is actually a product of JetBrains. JetBrains is behind the intelligent IDEs. They have a great set of IDEs. Like Intellij Idea is for Java. Then we have Android Studio that is also coming from JetBrains. We have PyCharm, and they have lots of great editors. So this company is not that company who build languages. And eventually the Kotlin was not built as a language. It was built as a tool, a plugin, which has taken a shape of language later on because the set of features that it was offering. And till today also, Kotlin, even though it's a language, there is no public SDK available for Kotlin. So if you want to get started with Kotlin, it's not like the way you have JDK, you can download it, install it, and then get started with Java. Kotlin is not like that. Kotlin is still added as a plugin. If you have Android Studio, nowadays Android Studio comes with Kotlin plugin by default installed, but if you have used Android Studio for 3.0 or before version, then you need to manually add Kotlin to that. But 4.0 onwards, they by default add this. The best part is that it's modern, concise, and safe programming language. So if you see about the Java, then Java nowadays is releasing update quite faster than before, but earlier it was not like that. Java was quite slow to give updates. When it comes to Kotlin, then you'll see a frequent update from the community member because Kotlin is open source, which means that it's not about the JetBrains team. If you also want to contribute to the Kotlin development, then you can do that. So it will be like an open source contribution. That's the reason that Kotlin is one such language which is not just modern, concise, but you'll see an updated version time to time, like in every 3 months or 4 months, you'll see a new update. A new update always brings some new features. So that is okay. Kotlin is having such a great features, advantages, but why do we need to bother about Kotlin? Because if you still see about the widespread usage of Java or JavaScript, then they are really great language. Java is not like it's a very bad language. Java is really great, and so many developers have used it in the past. And currently also, so many developers are using it. Rather, we have a domain Java developers. So it's not like Java is bad language. Then why to use Kotlin over Java? And even Google has pushed Kotlin as a first-class language for Android app development. It doesn't mean that Google has stopped Java support for app development, but it just means that Kotlin is the preferred language for app development. The reason is that it is having a blended communication, or you could say a blended combination of object-oriented and functional programming language. We'll see that when I'll show the hands-on what it means, but you can think this as if the way functional programming language works, like you do not specify the data type. So those who have used C++ or Java, they might know about this. If you want to say declare a variable, then you just specify like int name or int age, something like that, and then you specify the value. But it's not possible in Java or C++, like leave int from the age and then let it automatically understand that it's type of int. Those things are available in Kotlin. So this is something which you could correlate with the Python. In Python, you need not to specify the data type. Based on the value given, it understands what's the data type. And that feature is available in Kotlin. Interoperability is one of the greatest thing for the success of Kotlin. Say that you already have your project written in Kotlin or written in Java, but now because of any reason you want to use, say if it is Java, then you want to use Kotlin, or if it is written in Kotlin, now you want to write something in Java. Then that interoperability is something which Kotlin offers. So not in the same file, but in the same project, you can have a set of Java files and Kotlin files, and that will compile very normally. There is no such issue. So who can answer about this, that why it is possible even? Because I'm talking about two different languages. Java is one language, Kotlin is another language, and then I'm saying in a single project, I'm going to keep both the files. So how it's going to work, and why does it work in reality?
Is it because it is an open source product kind of program? Java and Kotlin both are open source.
So Java from version 1.8 onward is no longer an open source. Java became a closed source from 1.8. whereas Kotlin is still an open source and that will remain open source lifetime. They signed a contract between the Google and JetBrains teams. So that will remain open source, but Java is no longer an open source.
Okay.
Java bytecode. So yes. So one thing is that eventually you're writing code either in Java or Kotlin, but the end result, the object code that's going to generate, that is something which is understandable by the JVM. So eventually either you write in Kotlin or you write in Java. Both of them is going to give you the same object code. With this, you can either use in, say, either Kotlin or Java. It really doesn't matter because end result, the object code which machine is going to understand by further compilation, that is going to be same for both of them. The best part here is also, if you learn Kotlin, then you'll no longer just be available to make Android application, but you can make yourself available for cross-platform app development also. Kotlin native supports iOS app development. Kotlin altogether support Android app development. Kotlin native is for iOS. Then we also have a server-side support. So if any of you have tried about the Java, Spring Boot, or other things, they are useful for server-side coding. Any place where you can use Java, you can use Kotlin also. So it is available for server-side, Android app development, iOS app development, even for web frontend because Kotlin is compatible with JavaScript also. Kotlin multi-platform is a new thing which is helpful for making hybrid application where you could have a single code base for your common logic at one place and then platform specific content at their individual packages. So right from a single code base, if you want to create Android and iOS application, you can do that with Kotlin multi-platform, provided your UI code is different for both the platforms because Android UI is different, iOS UI is different. So it's not like overall one-time code runs everywhere. That is there with Flutter till now, that you can have a one-time code, just release it to Android, iOS, or web. That works well with Flutter, but here it's not like that. Common code at one place, platform specific at their respective places. So one language, so many advantage. Server side, Android, iOS, and web frontend, right from single language. Also, if you are interested in machine learning, then it is also available for machine learning. JetBrains has released Kotlin Deep Learning Framework, which is built on top of Java APIs of TensorFlow. So using Kotlin, you can not just create applications, but now you can train machine learning models also. So in the code lab, if you have the QR code scanner, then here it is. Otherwise, let me ping link in the chat. So that's the link for the study jam. Okay, here I have pinged in the chat. So when you go on this page, you'll see two things there. One is for new to programming. Another one is pure programming experience. When you click on programming, you'll see all these 4 tracks. Well, currently I'm not going on this, but what I'm going to cover is what do they have used in this code lab. And later on, you can try on this code lab tomorrow altogether. I'll again be available. So if you have any questions, you can ask me at that time. So this was about the pathway. Whenever you open any of the code lab, you'll see multiple things there. You'll also find some videos, then code lab to get hands-on experience. They have also created a code for you, which is hosted on GitHub. You'll get all those things as you go on with the code lab. The code lab are very straightforward and it is very simple. Like even if you do not have peer experience, it really doesn't matter. You can just get started with it and you will understand everything properly. As you complete your code, you will also earn badges. This batch are useful for you to showcase in your developer profiles, so that later on, if you want to showcase like I have experience on this particular things, then you can show those batches. You'll earn badge when you complete your first code lab, when you start your code lab, even when you do any sort of certification. For example, if you want to have Android certification or iOS certification, not iOS here, but for Android or TensorFlow or any sort of things, then also you earn badges. So developer profile is one such place where you can have all your badges. As soon as you see the videos, you go through the course content, you keep on earning the badges. I guess someone was having question. Someone has raised the hand. Do anyone is having any question here? Okay. So the first thing there is you have to create your developer profile, and the link is given there itself in the chat. The moment you have your developer profile ready, you just have to sign in. If you have already signed in, it will keep on adding to your account. Also, at the end of the pathway, you'll have a quiz to complete. As you complete the quiz, you'll earn your badge. So this was about the code lab. Now let's talk about, okay, before that, the developer profile. So this is how it looked like. As you complete your code lab and on batches, eventually it's going to club everything to your profile name, your picture, and then you have your batches. You can arrange it to your favorite batch and all batches, so that later on, if you want to show it your favorite batches at one place, you can do that. Okay, now let me come back again to the Kotlin programming language. So Kotlin is the first class language for Android app development. If you are new to app development, which I believe most of you are new to the app development, then the prime question is like which language you should go ahead with, because most of the SDK are still in Java, and you'll get lots of content on Java as compared to Kotlin. So should you go ahead with Java or should you go ahead with Kotlin? Then I would say that the course contents are already updated. If you'll see on Udacity, then Udacity is having Android fundamental courses. They have also updated the things in Kotlin. So you can learn this stuff in Kotlin. Also, there are so many, the sample applications are available, which is written in Kotlin, but still many are still in Java. However, if you are new, then I would strongly recommend to go ahead and start with Kotlin, because this is the future for the app development as compared to the Java version, because eventually you have to learn Kotlin. Kotlin Playground. So now we are going to see the code. All of you who want to get a hands-on for this, then just open the link. Let me share link in the chat. Kotlin Playground. Okay, so here is the link. So when you click on this link, it will take you to the Kotlin Playground page. Those who have the IDEs with them, then you can just directly open that IDE, either Android Studio or Intellij Idea. Intellij Idea is preferred one, but if you have Android Studio, then that's even better. So shall I start with coding now, or do you want some time, or do you have any question in between till now? Then you can have those in the comment. Any questions so far? How to get it in Android Studio. So Android Studio, the current version, whichever you're going to have it, it will automatically have the Kotlin plugin. So you need not have to install it explicitly. What is cross-platform app development? So Cross-platform is a way where you can create multiple applications right from a single language. We also have a React Native, React JS, then Flutter. They all offer this cross-platform app development. That means from a single language, you are creating multiple applications. One more variant of this one is from a single code base, creating that application. From a single code base means that you're not going to change your code based on the platform. Language remains same, but the code base, if that is changing, that's also cross-platform. And if language remains same, code base also remains same, that's also cross-platform app development. So Flutter is one such framework which offers you this, where your code base and your language both remain same, and then you can just export it to your Android, iOS, or even for the web. Kotlin, on the other hand, with Kotlin multi-platform support this feature, where you have a single code base, like all the common logic. Say, for example, you're doing a networking call. Then that networking part is common across the application. That's not going to change. What's going to change is the UI. So with Kotlin multi-platform, using Kotlin, you can create UI for your, say, iOS application, and then for Android application, eventually your networking part could be there in a common module, which both Android and iOS module is going to refer to. So by this way, you don't have to learn multiple languages. For example, for Android, it is Kotlin. And if you want to have iOS for this, then you should use Swift language. But if you use multi-platform, then no need to learn two languages. Which API we should set? What is that question actually? Which APIs we should set? I'm not getting exactly that what you're trying to ask. Which APIs? Okay. Okay, so when you create a new project, then it shows you the API levels, and it also shows you the target audience. Well, currently, if you target anything above API level 21 and above, then you reach to the majority of the user. 21 is for the lollipop. Lollipop and onwards, you reach out to around 99 or 98% of the user base in the entire world. So I believe 21 or 23 should be sufficient. Any other questions? Okay, so let me start with Kotlin then. So let's get started with Kotlin. So here is the syntax. How many of you know about the Scala language? Have you ever tried Scala language? Scala is also JVM dependent language. Okay, so Kotlin follows Scala syntax. Those who already know about the Scala language, then it's the left-hand play for them to get started with Kotlin. Because the syntax which you see here, that's purely from the Scala language. And this is completely different than Java. So if you have Java background, you have experience in Java, then you may find a bit hard to get started with Kotlin because of the syntax. But once you know about the syntax, the language feature that it offers, then I'm sure you will not look behind to again go back to Java. So in Java, we have public static void main. Here in Kotlin, we have fun main. All the functions are defined with this keyword fun. And this is the entry point for your Kotlin function. This is the place where you can get started, run your code, and print whatever statement you want to print, just like public static void main. The structure is so simple here, just like we have in C++. No string args, nothing like that. You have fun main and print whatever or do whatever stuff which you want to do inside this function main. One thing which I said is about the function. So the fun is keyword. Whichever function which you are creating, that function has to be marked with a fun keyword. If you do not add fun keyword, then the compiler will not understand that this is function. This is why you see fun main. Eventually, print is something like system.out.print. You also have println. So rather than writing system.out every time, you can avoid writing all those things. Just write print or println. That's why I was saying Kotlin is concise language. This is what makes it concise. Do my screen is not visible where I have this code base fun main print welcome to Android.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. Okay, so here is another part of it. Now inside function main, you just do not want to print something. You might also want to create your objects. In Java or in C++, we have something called as primitive types. And we also have something called as objects. Here in Kotlin, everything is object. There's nothing called as primitive type. Under the hood, it is in turn going to create the primitive types. So if you want to have integer, Boolean, string altogether is an object, but for like say double or float, all of them here are object. They are not primitive type. So in Java, we have this variant where if you say small int, it's primitive. If you say capital I, then integer, and it's an object. But this is something which sort of confusion that it creates, that when to use object, when to use primitive. Nothing such complexity here with Kotlin. You just create object, and compiler is smart enough to know that whether it should leave it as an object or should it convert it to primitive type. Here, for example, one thing which you could see here is var name. And this is what I was talking about, the functional programming. Now, in functional programming, you do not specify the data type. The data type is automatically inferred based on the value assigned. Now with Kotlin, you can do that. This is exactly same as writing in Java, like string name equals to some name, or string country equals to some country name. Here in Kotlin, var name equals to whatever name you want to specify. Because after equal to sign, the assignment is string, so string data type is automatically inferred for name. But one thing which is quite strange here is that var and val. Why do we need this? What's the use of all of them? The overall objective is to assign and then use it. Then why not to have a common name which we can use it anywhere? So the keyword var and val, they are quite useful here. Val is for immutable content, which means that once you assign, you do not want to change the value of it. So you can think as if it's a constant. Var, on the other hand, the variable whose value you can change at any point of time. So val, when you do not want to change. Var, when you can change the variable at any point of time, the variable values. Like for example, here, if I want to say name equals to XYZ, it is possible because it is var. But same thing I cannot do with country anymore, because I already assigned a value to the country with the val keyword, which means that now if I try to say country equals to XYZ, it's going to throw an error because this is not permitted. And we'll see all of them. Once this slide ends, then I'll show this in hands-on. You can also try it out. You'll see the errors when you try to assign a value to the val object. And now let me talk about the function. So for function, as I said, we have a fun keyword, which makes the function as function. You have to write fun and then the function name. The naming convention followed here is your function name should start with a small case, and then you can have your upper and the lower case. The return type for function, that is quite important because most of the function do return value. So the syntax here is fun, function name, colon, return type. So here you could see fun, validate username is a function name, colon string is the return type of this function. Inside this function, I can again do whatever thing which I want, and eventually at the end, if I want to return, then return keyword and then finally return it. We can return in even better way? Anyone think that we can do still better than this? What I've shown is a general way of creating a function and then returning a value from it. But how you can think to improve it? Any way where we could improve this function and make it look even more concise? No answers, everything is good, no changes required. So direct return. So instead of assigning to an object, we can directly return the string. Any other optimization that we could do here? Okay, so here is one more variant, and then I'll show how Kotlin handled this kind of cases where you have a single line return statement. This is again the same function, but now instead of having var username equals to some string, I'm taking this from a parameter function. And this is how you specify the parameter. Again, same thing, function name, and in the bracket, you ask for the parameters. The syntax is completely different than Java here. In Java, you specify the data type first and then the name of the object or the variables. Here, it's reverse. First, give the object name, colon, data type. So do not get confused with this one. Username is not a data type. Username is a parameter, and it is parameter colon data type. Finally, colon string for this function is a return type of string. And now we have a single return statement. Now, before I show the Kotlin way of optimizing it further for single line return, anyone can say about this? How can we even further optimize this? I can give a hint. The hint is something like a functional programming. A functional programming which can automatically know about the data type based on the value assigned. Can we try to use those things here? Can we simplify this further even? Well, for function, val and var is not required. So it's not like val username or var username. That will be the variable colon object name. Straightforward, no val and var, because by default, all the parameters are val. So if I want to change username, it's not possible because username for function is by default val. And that's something which we cannot change. Remove the string function. Okay, so if I remove string, if I just make it like fun, validate user, then username colon string, if I remove string from there, then how this function will know that it is doing a return of string type? Because I want to return string from this. There, with the object, it was straightforward. It was trying to get the value based on equal to assignment operator. As you were using the equal to assignment operator, so the value next to that, it was trying to infer the data type. But here, if I removed colon string, it's a braces. Braces, again, it's going to provide you the scope inside it. How do it will infer from this scope? So the Kotlin way of handling this for a single line return statement is write your function name, any variables which you want to have it, then again use the equal to assignment operator. Use this equal to operator and then write whatever you want to write, and that will automatically return that whenever anyone calls this validate username. Okay, so actually it doesn't matter you are from which domain, which domain of study, or whether you're in a computer science or not, or you're doing ECE, civil, because here in this session, we are talking about the basics of it. So it is for everyone. I hope by the end of this session, you will have sufficient exposure on Kotlin that you can write the Kotlin program. Doesn't matter what is the background and what's the field of your study. So, okay, now let me talk about this one. So the single written statement in concise way for Kotlin is this one, where you can have equal to, and equal to, just write whatever you want to write. Username dot plus. So what I'm doing here is that rather than just calling equal to username, I'm also appending the string to this username, which means that, say the username is Pankaj. Now what I'm doing is that I'm saying to this username, Pankaj, also append @gmail.com and then return it. This is what this one is doing. Okay, now let's get started with the hands-on. Let me do one thing. Let me share my Studio IntelliJ editor. Android Study Jam. Present now. Okay, so I hope my screen is visible to all of you. Is it visible? Can anyone confirm this? Okay. So because now I'm going to open this studio, or let me know if I open it side by side, it will not be full screen. So it will not be visible to me, whatever you're writing in chat, but after a certain period of time, I'll come and have a look in the chat section also. Okay, so I'm using the Intellij Idea Ide. This IDE is really helpful for the Java programming or for the Kotlin also. If you have Android Studio, then you can try out same thing with Android Studio also. But in Android Studio, you have to like build and run the application. With Intellij Idea, it is very straightforward. Those who do not have IDE, they can switch to the Kotlin Playground, and Kotlin Playground is again going to have the same thing. Let me have it here. Like you could see something like this with the Kotlin Playground. Both are exactly the same thing. This one is the online environment, and with Intellij Idea, you get a local environment. But if you are new to the Android, or say Java, or for Kotlin, or for C++ or Python, whatever it is, use IDE, because IDE is going to give you the hints, warnings, so you will learn much better than learning through the online IDE portals. Okay, now let me talk about the basics first. As I said about the var, one thing with var is I can change the value of it. So if I want to say like name as XYZ, I can do that because this property is mutable. I can change the value of it as and when required. Oh, by the way, do fonts are visible properly, or shall I increase the font size? Visible, okay. Okay, so as I said about the var, this value you can change based on requirement. And those things which you do not want to change, that you can specify as val. Now, if I try to assign a value to this, you'll see an error. This error is because val cannot be assigned. You can just assign the value once. And once you assign the value, you cannot reassign the value to it once again. apart from this, the next topic which I want to cover here is the nullability. How about if I want to have a null value? Like I had name. Now I said name as XYZ and it allowed me. But what if I'm trying to fetch from the network, and from a network, instead of name, I just got a null value? Well, in Kotlin, this is not allowed in a straightforward way because Kotlin offers null safety. I cannot assign null to a non-null object. This is a non-null object. To assign null to any of the object, you have to explicitly make it nullable. And that you can do by specifying the data type. So this is the name of an object, colon, data type. So the syntax is like you have keyword, after that you have name, then you have colon, and then you have data type. That's the syntax. This keyword could either be your var or val. So now this is an object which accepts type of string. But again, it's not nullable. To make it nullable, you have to have a question mark here. Now I want to know from you guys, what's wrong with this code? I make this as nullable. So have a look at this code. I say name.length. I want to print name. What's wrong with this code? The code is very straightforward. You have var, name, data type of string, which can accept null value. I've given some value to it, and I'm just trying to get the length of it. Anything wrong with this code? Or what could be an issue with this code? While you do not need internet connection when you are doing programming on PC. If you are using online IDE, then you need it. Name is still null. Have a look at this. I do have a value. I have given value for the name. So name is not null. So how many of you have encountered the null pointer exception? I'm sure most of you might have done programming before. Anyone of you have gone through this error, encountered this error of null pointer exception? Someone raised the hand. Okay. So what is the null pointer exception? When do you encounter null pointer exception? So null pointer exception is on a null, if you try to do any sort of operation, you get null pointer exception. For example, null dot length. This is not permitted because you cannot do any operation on null. You cannot multiply it, you cannot add it, you cannot get the length of it because null is altogether null. You cannot do any sort of operation there. So even though I have given a value here for name, it's still throwing an error. That's all because I need to call it in a type safe way. Because eventually during runtime, what I could do is that I could assign name to null. And the moment I do that, my earlier code will raise a null pointer exception during runtime. So that's why, because of null safety, whenever you make any object as nullable, And if you want to access it, you have to call question mark dot. And you send some basic codes. Where do you want me to share that basic code? In the chat section? Okay, let me move on to the next topic. Function. So how do we create functions? A function, you can have fun, whatever name you want to have it, like get user info. And then I have my function. Now, do anyone can say about how could I provide a return type for this? Colon string. But why just a string? I could have anything here. I could have int, I could have boolean, I could have a double. But what if I do not have this information with me? That what it's going to return? Then I could have any here. With any, it's going to return any sort of value. Dynamically, it could be string, boolean, integer, double, anything it could be. Unit, you can think as an alternative of void in Java. With unit, it means that it's not going to return anything. And by default, it is unit. So we need not to specify unit explicitly. Also, if you want to return value directly, you can have equal to and return the value. Straightforward. Because you are already doing this, so if you do not want to write this, then this is also permitted. It's permitted because the return type of this function, get user info, is inferred from the value, which is string here. Now, let me talk a bit about the extension function, which is one of the very exciting topic of Kotlin. Say I have a string. In Java, you might write something like string name equals to, say, name. So this is a Java way. In Kotlin, you do the same thing with, say, var name string. Well, in the previous example, when I wrote something like fun get user info 1, 2, 3, it is string. Do anyone can say why do it is string? Even though I wrote 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 is a number, but still I'm saying it's string. Yes, that's because of the double quote. Anything in the double quote is treated as a string. How about single quote? So single quote is for the character and double quote is for string. Okay, now let me come back to the extension function, which is very exciting topic of Kotlin. Now on this string, what do I have is that, and I want all of you to try out in the Kotlin Playground. You specify var, have name, colon string, and write your name there. Now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a function giving here a string. So till now you have seen function like get user info, where I said that this is the name of the function. And inside this, you do operation. This was straightforward function. Now extension function is you have a data type here. You have one keyword, specify data type, then have dot operator, a single dot, and now write the function name like add greeting, or I'd say like, yeah, fine, add greet. So what this is going to do? Anyone having any expectation here? This is my traditional function. This is indeed a traditional function, but it is done on the string. So string dot this function. This is something which is heavily used in Kotlin. Doesn't matter you're doing for Android or server side. This is something which you'll see at most of the places. There's something called as extension functions. Any expectation what's going on here? Why do we need a string here? Is it a return type? Because I specified that return type is something which you do after function name colon, and then you would have your like string, int, or whatever you want to have it. So what this is doing here? Well, most of you, I guess, might be aware of inheritance. Inheritance is a way where you inherit the property of the parent class to the child class. And here with the extension function, without using inheritance, if you want to add property to it, you can do that using extension functions. Like for example, on this string, what I'm going to do is that I want to have a single return statement. Again, I could have a single line, but here I'm showing with the return keyword. I could have this. Now this is nothing but this is string value. On this, I want to append comma, how are you? So this is what I'm doing here. I have a function string dot add greet, which is having a return type of string. Inside this, I just have a single method, return this dot plus how are you. Now what I'm going to do is that inside this fun main, on the string data type, now name is of string data type. I can print length of this. This is something which is coming from the property of string. I can also append using plus. That's again coming from this data type property. Add greet. This is something which I wrote. It's not coming from the string property. This class doesn't have any such function called as add greet. It's something which I have added. Now if I print this, it's going to return the name, which is name plus whatever I had here. So using extension function, you can add certain features to the your data type or to the any object on which you are using this extension function. So all of you try out this code, and in the chat box, send me what you are getting as an output for this. So we have var name of type string. You write your own name there. Create an extension function with string dot add greet or any name you can give here. This is purely up to you. Then you have a return type of string with a single line return statement, this plus whatever you have it here. Let me also have this in the comment section. So that's an advantage of extension function, where you can change the property, add certain things by creating extension functions. Also, now let's talk about the higher order function. After that, we'll take on to the classes and object. Higher order function is something which is not available till Android, till Java version of 1.8, but the future version, the upgraded version, which is not open source, they will have this. So higher order function is, you can have a function as a parameter, or you can return function as a result. So till now you have seen I wrote like get user name or user info, and this was returning an object. How about if I could return function here? I also took name as a parameter. How about if I take function as a parameter? With higher order function, it is possible to do that. What you could do is like, say you want to have a function, and this is something which is called as label colon, and this is how you start a function. The return type of this function. Now this is the return type of this function. It's an empty function, which means that it will accept anything. If you specify int, then it will only take int. If it's string, then only for the string. But if you do not specify anything here, then you can pass anything to this function with the return value of unit, means nothing. If it should return something, then you can specify here. And this is not for the entire function. You could have one return type here and another here also. So this is purely possible because this is for the entire function. This return type is for this internal function. So here we are passing function as a parameter to this function get username. So any doubt here before I show more code about this, about the higher order function? We have function. To this function, I'm returning function or taking function as a parameter. That makes it a higher order function. Any question on this higher order function? Nothing as such. So let me continue this one. Now, what I could do here is that, say there are certain things which you should always do. Like, for example, you may have certain things like username length, which you want to have. So this is a parameter, a traditional parameter. This is the higher order function. And now, say you want to do certain things only when the length is greater than 10. Else, you do not want to do anything. Then rather than doing this validation check over and over, you could create a higher order function for this. Then from the function main, could call like get username, say user length name is var name, and I'm giving some random value here, give like name dot length. And here I have to write the code which I want to execute when this name dot length is greater than 10. One thing which you could see here is that I've specified this lambda outside this function, which is one way to do it. Other way is you can have it as a parameter also. Both are fine. But to make it more expressive, if it's the last function, which is a higher order function, then this is the convention which is followed here. So you can have your like a print statement, and then you can print the name. If you run this code, then this is going to print name as whatever name you've specified here is some random values only when length is greater than 10. For that, you just have to call this here. So here you are providing what it should do, and by calling this label, it's going to invoke this, whatever you're specifying inside Lambda. Here, it's nothing but a single print statement. Under the hood, what it's going to do is that whatever you write it here, it will bring it down to this place. So any question on this higher order function, because this is quite complex, and by using higher order function and extension function, you can create lots of APIs, which are very convenient to you. So any questions so far for higher order function? And nothing, then let me show one magic with Kotlin. So with any language, whether it's Java or C++, the way you call function is very straightforward, which is something like, say, fun add number. And then you take, say, a number of type int. Let me do one thing. Let me return from here itself. And instead of having a single normal function, I'm making it extension function over int. It means on any integer, now I can call add num also. This is the property which I'm adding it to the int. Indeed, I want to return this plus num. This is nothing but the integer on which you are going to call this add num. And this num is nothing but what you're specifying here. Now I could say something like phi dot add num. What happened to my function? This is a normal naming convention where this is a normal way of accessing any of the extension function. You have the object, on that you call the extension function. And then in this braces, you specify the parameter. How about writing in this way? Add num 45. Is this permitted? How many of you say yes? So we have this extension function. This extension function is nothing but an extension added over integer. On int, I'm just having a normal function add num, which is taking one parameter as number. Eventually, it's going to return me a number by adding this integer and this integer, this plus num. And to call this method, what do I need to do is that I just need to call phi dot add num and whatever number which I am to add. The result for this one will be 50. It's nothing but phi plus 45. I have a dot, and because it's a function, so I also have the braces, the brackets. But how about calling in this way? Is it permitted? Well, currently it is showing me an error that I cannot do in this way. So Kotlin have one more operator here, a keyword here, which is infix. The moment you add infix before function, then you can avoid this convention of dot and brackets. And you can call with the spaces in between. Phi space name of the function space parameter. This is only going to work when you have a single parameter. If I have more than one, then it's not going to work. Infix only works with single parameter. Okay, so I'm going to cover two more topics here. One is classes, another one is object, because for the next session, you're going to use class and object, both of them. I hope function and the normal syntax is clear, or do anyone is having doubt in this function and the normal way of creating the objects, like with val and var. So clear for all of you, or any doubt still? Higher order, it's okay, because that's something which is going to take more time. It's quite complex to understand initially, but then it's okay. You will get to know about it. Extension function. So, okay, extension function is a way of adding functionality to the existing components without inheriting it. For example, say I have string. Now, say name is of string type. Now on this name, if you could see, then I have all these properties: plus, length, get, char, toString, applies, add to point, compare to. All these things are something which is coming from the APIs, the string APIs, and I can use it as and when required. But how about if I want to add something to the string which is not provided by this APIs, something new, completely different than this? For example, say that you have a dollar amount and you're saying this as 50. Now you do not have a dollar symbol in front of this. This is something you can think as if it is coming from some server or based on some API calls. Now to add dollar in front of this, you can append a string. But how about if you have an extension function which can do this work for you? Extension function which is written on string. The function name, say I'm saying add dollar. And this is going to return me a string with the dollar symbol in front of it. So what is this actually? Dollar this. In Java, you might have done something like, okay, so in Java, you might have done something like 50 plus 45. What this is going to return is 5045 as a string. In Kotlin, if you want to do the same thing, you could do something like $50 and then $45. This will be your object name, like the dollar amount. Have say dollar amount once again here. This has something called a string template. When you use dollar, you can have any object after this. This object is something which will be added to the string, and eventually it's going to convert this to the string. So this function which you are seeing here, add dollar. So none of the string APIs have add dollar method in that. But now what I could do is that on this object, dollar amount, which is of type string, I can call this method add dollar. And this is eventually going to return dollar to me. So by this way, you can add any sort of properties to the existing components without inheriting them. So I hope this might be clear for the extension functions also. Okay, now let me switch to class and then finally on the object. So those who have used Java or C++, what is class? What is class? What is object? Class, group, blueprint. Yes, blueprint.
Class is a blueprint of variables and related methods. Object is a bundle of variables and related methods.
Yes, so class is a blueprint and object is a way through that you could use the properties or the members of the classes. So you could have a single class or multiple class, doesn't matter. Object is going to provide you the instance of that class, the blueprint of whatever you have created. And through that instance, you call the properties or the member variables. Class on alone doesn't do anything. It just give you a structure. An object is through which you access those things, either a function or the member variables. But here, the concept is a bit different in Kotlin. Class is same. Object concept is also same. But in Kotlin, we have something called as object as a keyword itself. Okay, let me talk about class first and then we'll go on object. So say I have a class. Class is like class info. Okay, let me make it better. Class student. And now this class should have information like name of the student of type string. Also, I want age of the student of type integer, and I need address of the student type string. So one thing with Kotlin is that for all sort of global objects, you have to initialize value to it. You cannot leave it without initializing the object. And that's why you're seeing all sort of error here. Even though I do not have any values with me for name, age, and address, because they are treated as the global object, as it's a part of class and not inside any function. So I have to explicitly give value to them. I could give some sort of default value like name is empty string, age as 0, then address as empty string. And this is all good. One of the way of doing this. But if your objective is just to create a model class where you just have to have a getters and setters so that you could set a name of the student and get the name of the student, then you do not need to do in this way. Because if you try to do in this similar fashion, and if you think about the Java approach, then you create all this as a private variables, and then you also have the getters and setters for them. But here in Kotlin, they are properties, which means that they have the getters and setters. For example, now I could create an object of this. And this is how you create an object. No new keyword here. Like in Java, we had this new, nothing like that in Kotlin. Also, one thing I'm not sure how many of you have observed, but I'm not keeping semicolon anywhere because semicolon is not needed with Kotlin. Now, if I want to change the name of the student, I can directly call name and do any sort of changes. Then student.age, I can assign any value to that also. Same way, if I want to print the name, then what I could do is that I could directly call student.name. So how do it understands it, whether I'm trying to call the getter or the setter? Well, it depends on this operator. You have the assignment operator. It means that you are trying to set something. And if you do not have it, then it understands that you're trying to get the value out of it. So this is okay, but how about if I already have this information with me, like I have name, age, and address, I want to give this as a constructor parameter. Here, if you see, I don't have any constructor parameter, it's empty. They're all the members of this. I'm creating an object, and on that object, I'm assigning this values. How about passing this to the constructor itself? Then what I could do is that, let me pass all these things as a constructor parameter. Because they are going to be constructor parameter, then they will not be treated as the global objects. So I can giving this values. Now I don't need to give this. This is my simple, straightforward class. But to get the properties of two strings and class comparison, what I could do is that I could specify data class. And by this way, I create my model class. Now on this object, if I call .toString, it's going to print the name, age, and address, all sort of things, whatever I have. So this name will go here, age will go at this place, and then address will go at this place. Eventually, if I want to change the value, I can do it at any point of time. That property, I still have it because they are all var. If I want to make it consistent, I don't want to change the value, then I can make it val also. Now you'll see error here. This was about class. For inheritance, one thing with Kotlin is that all classes by default are final, which means that, say I have another class as person, or say I have two classes for female and one is for male. Now if I want to inherit the class student, then I could do this, but I also have to specify the parameter values because I have a constructor. So any way to avoid this, then we do have it, and that's something called as secondary constructor. That's going to make it more complex, so I'm not going to cover that. For example, let me just remove this. And here you could see the error. The error is because by default, they are final, and you cannot inherit any final class. So what you should do is that you should explicitly mark as open. So I hope this is clear to all of you. We don't have to specify data type after each variable, right? Okay, so here, if you do not do that, because they are the constructor parameters, and if you try to avoid doing that, then it's not going to work. Because here the objective is not the initialization of the objects. Here the objective is to give this as a parameter for this student class, and then access it as and when required. So when you are giving this as a parameter for the class constructor, then you have to specify the name. It doesn't matter whether you're giving the value or not. Open student, why open? So the reason why do I had open there is because all class by default are final. Which means that, say again, if I have this female and class male, if this class has to extend students, then it's not going to work because final classes cannot be inherited. It's not going to allow me. If I want to make this class to get inherited by any other class, I have to explicitly mark this as open. And only I can inherit any other class. Well, in Java, this concept is not there. In Java, this concept is similar that you cannot inherit final class, but by default, the classes are not final in Java. But here in Kotlin, by default, all classes are final, which means that you cannot inherit them. So you have to explicitly make them open so that any other class could inherit it. Okay, look like I'm clear for this also. Now let me show one more magic here. That is, I already have a value assigned to this parameters, but I still need to provide value for this. Or before doing that, let me ask one straightforward question. Here I have name, age, and address. How about if I pass age first, name, and then address? Is it permitted? So the constructor parameter says that I should give name, age, and then address. But instead of that, I'm saying that I want to pass age first, name after that, and then address. Well, this is possible in Kotlin. What you can do here is that you can use named argument, which means that before passing this values, you can specify the name of the parameter, and then it is possible. By using the named argument, you can give the parameter values out of sequence. So again, no need to remember the sequence, switch between the classes just to know about the sequence. All those things are not required. You can directly give it in any sequence based on your preference. Also, if you already have the value, for example, say, I always want name of the student, I always want age, but address is something which I'm not interested in. Then what I could do is that I can specify the default value for age. By this way, I'm specifying the default value. Now, while creating the student object, I have to specify name, age, and I can avoid passing address. If I do not pass address here, it will fetch from the default value, which is nothing but the empty string. If I pass any value here, then it will substitute this empty string with the value which I have specified. This is something called as the default arguments. Okay, so am I clear for classes also? Then we'll move to the last topic, which is object. Meanwhile, you could try it out this on a Kotlin Playground. You could create like open class student, give val name, then age, address, and try not passing the address. It will work properly. And then you can just print student dot to string. It's going to give you the value for the name and age, and for address, it will be an empty string. Okay, now let me come to the last topic of this, okay, let me run this. Before switching to the last topic. Open class, okay. Deleted data. So here you could see this. Because it's a data class, whenever I call toString, it will automatically give me the value of this name, age, and address. Earlier, you have seen some random number there. That was nothing but the address of this class. And it was coming because instead of data, it was open, which is something which I wrote to show that how you could do inheritance. So if you do not have open there, toString, because it's something which is a property of data classes, it's going to give you the address of this class. And when you have data, then you get the property of the model classes. So here I'm getting this empty string. Address do not have any value. I could give like not found. Now if I run this, you'll see name as name, age as 1, and address as not found. Also, if I have to give a value, then instead of not found, you'll see address as India this time. Name, age, address. Okay, clear? Here, can we create tables in Kotlin? So table is a concept of structured query language, which is for the SQL. toString. So the reason why toString is used here is to show the individual value of this student object. I do not want to call like student.name, student.age, student.address to see these values. So what I could do is that I could directly call toString, and it will automatically show me the value for all these properties. So I can see the value assigned for the name, for age, and for address. All these things is done with this single method toString. Okay, now let me switch to the last topic, which is object. So all of you who have coded before, how do you create singleton class? Or in a simple fashion, you have an object, you want to create a singleton of it. How do you do that? Okay, before diving that deep into those things, let me talk about what is singleton. So singleton is a concept where it's a factory pattern now, where the objective is once you create an object, you not recreate that object once again. You will just reuse the same object over and over. So by this way, you have a single instance of that object. Now say how you could create a singleton object where you just want to maintain single object, no new object after that. Okay, so one of the way in Java is to have a static object. You create a private constructor object, you make it static, and then you just check whether the value assigned to that is null or not. If it is null, assign it once, and then just leave it. With static, what it means is that it's going to have a single memory assigned throughout the program run. So by that way, you get an advantage of singleton. But it requires lengthy piece of code because you have to create a class, create a private constructor, create singleton, write a getters and setters. How about Kotlin? Well, in Kotlin, you just have to create object and say I have network client. And inside this, for example, now in general, you create a single instance of say network or shared preference or any sort of things when you deal with Android app development. But here, for example, I have student. Let me create it for the student. Say I'm giving name as name and then age as 1, 2, 3. Now this is going to create singleton for me. Only this little piece of code is sufficient to create singleton. So here, when I go back to this function main, I can write like object network client dot student. And this is going to give me the single instance all the time. Simple, straightforward way to create singleton. Have object, inside object, do the initialization. That's it. One thing which you should certainly avoid doing this is creating a function and then you could like say init, and inside this, if you're trying to do something like student, then this is going to create new instance all the time. If you want to create single instance, do not write it inside function, because as the function executed, this part will also get executed and it's going to give you the different address. That means this will no longer be a singleton. And if you try to assign it there, like you have where you made it like student, type say null. And now inside this, if you try to do this, this is not going to work. This is going to give you a new address for the student. It means it's no longer a singleton. If you want to make it singleton, do remember always have your initialization right then and there, outside all the functions. So by this way, you create singleton. Now to access this, there is no need to have a getters and setters. They are properties, which means that they already have getters and setter. Just call this network client dot student, and this is going to return a single instance of this. It's not going to recreate every time. New. So new is not required in Kotlin. There is nothing called as new keyword in Kotlin. We do not have it. Okay, so I guess this is clear. Let me switch back to the slide. But before that, do anyone is having question on this coding part of it? Or shall I switch to my slide to conclude this session? Okay, let me switch to the slide once again. Okay, I'm back with the slide. So here is one such video which I have found, and I believe that because most of you are students, so I thought this is really, really helpful for all of you. And that's the reason that I left it here itself. This is a very short video of 3 minutes, and I think that it will really be helpful for all of you. So here it is.
Invariably, you will land on a project where you don't know much about what's involved. It's completely okay to say, you know, I have not the slightest idea to solve this problem. This is very normal, and it is normal for every single person.
I remember still just starting full-time work. And
do audio was audible, or it was just video which was playing? Audible, fine. Okay.
Invariably, you will land on a project where you don't know much about what's involved. It's completely okay to say, you know, I have not the slightest idea to solve this problem. This is very normal, and it is normal for every single person.
I remember still just starting full-time work and realizing, wow, I'm not sure I know how to work with big code bases, or I don't know this language, and it's frightening, and there's a lot you don't know. Find a little nugget you can take on and take it from there.
There's a lot of times when you run into areas where you don't know what to do, and you feel like you can't make it all come together. And the most important thing is to not get caught up in that. Sometimes the best thing you can do is actually just take a little time off of a problem and then circle back a little bit later when you have a fresher mind, and then it'll be easy.
Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you're a fake and somehow you snuck in and you don't deserve to be where you are. There are so many times at work where I get projects to work on, and internally I feel like there's no way I can do this. I'm totally going to fail at it. The only person expecting me to fail is myself. And so if I can get over that, I can gain more confidence and do anything that I want to do.
You have just asked me to code up something or to fix a bug. I don't even know where to begin. The best people I know learn to live with uncertainty, fear, doubt, confusion, and they just plow right ahead.
Failure it's going to happen if you take risks, and taking risks is important to succeed. I have a few tips on how to cope with that. Number one is try to see the silver lining of failure. Number two is I think preparing is really important. It will help you a lot in taking on risks that are more manageable and being able to succeed more often.
I think it's absolutely vital that when you go into building something, you accept that sometimes you're going to be wrong. If I had an opportunity to sort of go back in time and tell a younger version of myself, like just as I was getting started, what should I do? I think the main thing would be to experiment more and just always try and be learning new things.
You don't have to have all of the knowledge right now, but just realize that you can always learn it. And the whole coding process is a learning process.
So if you're in a class and it's been a while and you made progress, first of all, be proud of that progress. And you find yourself now feeling a little stuck, it's okay. Being overwhelmed is not a bad thing. That's my first advice. It means there's a lot of information coming your way, and you're so lucky that that is the case.
Okay, so that was a very short video. And with this, we'll conclude this session. These are few of the links which will be helpful for you to get started with Kotlin, the vocabulary which is used in Kotlin, then app development. There are few of the blog sites which is helpful for reading out the technical stuffs which you are going to use it eventually when you try to build any of the Android application. Also, because you are in Study Jam, if you want to do any sort of things for this, then you can again write it down on a Twitter and tweet with the hashtag of Android Study Jam, where you can also write like what you have learned in the Study Jam, so that other guys will also know about it, that what you're learning. Finally, for this one this is about my channel. So if you want to get started with Android, Kotlin, or Firebase, then I do create videos on this, on the latest topics of Android, Kotlin, and Firebase. You can subscribe this channel so that you could get a hands-on video, because most of my videos are not like theoretical videos where I just come say about theory. It's all about practical, how you could do it, how you could write it in a code. So this channel is all about that. It's all about tech, nothing beyond that. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I hope this session might be helpful for you to get started with Kotlin. And tomorrow we'll see about the Android also.
Thank you so much, sir. The session was amazing. I hope the participants had a good time. So I guess all of us will meet here same time tomorrow for the app development session. Thank you all for coming in. See you tomorrow.